your patience as I navigate this app.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? Look at us. Look at us, huh?
We're talking.
We're talking. I'm so glad that you invited me on to chat about this because it is so important. It is so important, especially motherhood at the intersection of friendships. So I'm glad that we're having this, this mashup.
Yeah, let's get into it. I think we're gonna try to talk for like 40 minutes or something like that. Um, but let's do quick intros. If you don't know me, I'm Laura Danger. I am an educator. I'm a coach for individuals like couples, specifically around domestic equity. And I use the fair play system involved in that. And I talk about weaponized incompetence and how normal it is, normal in our society. And would you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Yeah, so I am Danielle Bayard Jackson. I am a friendship coach and educator, and I just see my calling and my purpose as showing people not only the importance of friendship, but tangibly how to achieve more satisfaction in their friendships. Because the research says that at the end of the day, the happiest people are those who have quality relationships. So that's what I've devoted my career to the past couple of years, and it's been a really fun ride.
That's amazing. Um, okay, so we briefly talked about some of the things that I'm really curious about as a mother, as a woman, as an adult who has a hard time. You know, it's tough out here to have friends. What you work specifically with women, correct?
I do, but I always like to say that, like maybe 70% of the information is transferable, but the research shows that our friendships are different. The way we relate to one another, the things that we prioritize, the things that we're looking for, they're different. And so when I discovered that in doing the research, I leaned into working with women because our needs and tendencies are more complex.
Can you tell me about that? Because I think a lot about female friendship and also male friendship and like what how that contributes to what's going on at home. But
Mm.
what does the research say? What do you mean when you say there's a difference?
Yeah, so I like to start by saying at the end of the day, we all have the same needs. We prioritize them differently. So we all need, of course, to connect, to feel seen, to feel affirmed, to have people who support us. Like we all want the same things. That's a human, universal, theme. But we do prioritize things differently in our friendships. So, for example, the research says that the number one thing women look for in their same sex friendships is emotional support. We're looking for that. If we're not getting it, we're out. That's the expectation. And what's interesting is I'm starting to think about, the intersection of what you do and what I do. And I wonder how much of it is influenced because or by how much we're tasked with in our daily lives. So if I'm running the show at home, and it shouldn't be that way. If I'm running the show at home, it's even more important to me that the people I elect to pull into my life can offer me some kind of relief from the burden and labor of everyday life. So that's something that we're prioritizing in our friendships. Men, however, tend to prioritize wealth and status, which is interesting because I don't think they're going around saying how much do you make, but the research is saying that because men do activities together, they need to be with people who can do the same activities with them. And so that's how that works. So they prioritize doing things together. We prioritize somebody we can talk to and share of ourselves. Women's friendships are more fragile. They are deeper, but they're more fragile. It's because we get so close. We have such platonic intimacy in our relationships. So we take perceived transgressions more seriously. There's, that joke that men get over it and women are still harping on it. Well, because it was a deeper, more meaningful relationship. So we're not going to tolerate, other things that maybe a man would be okay with. I've heard stories of a man like getting stabbed by his friend, and then they're like having drinks the next year, and that's great for them. Even how we kind of qualify friendship. So for a lot of us, we'll say, the woman who knows the most about me right now in my life is probably my closest friend. Men on average tend to say the guy they've known the longest is their closest friend. And so there's this duration. Ours is closeness. Who knows the most about me? And, because of those differences, women are often tasked with doing more of the emotional labor in their marriages because a recent study from 2021 finds that when we are stressed as women, we tend to turn to our family. What is it? Our family and our friends, or no, our partner and our friends, but men to their family and their partner. they're not turning to their friends. So we're taking that on. He had a hard day at work, or he wants to cry, or he wants to whatever. We're taking that on too. But I have other people. During the pandemic, it says that on average, our networks shrunk about 16%, all of us. But men's 30%, 30%, their social networks shrank during the pandemic because they do things together and didn't have that opportunity. I'll end with this. There's an article that came out 24 hours ago in the New York Times talking about men's friendships, how weak they are, how men need them, but maybe because of cultural pressures, like, asking a guy to hang out one-on-one, but then because he maybe has a heightened sense of homophobia or whatever it is, how they're like, oh gosh, don't hug me, or oh, that's weird, or because they do all that, they are not receiving the same support that we are. And it just has other implications. So we're different in a lot of ways. And I think that shows up in how we relate to one another domestically as well.
Yeah, so until about a year ago, I was a classroom teacher and I work with students, basically pre-K through eighth grade. And for a while, I was doing these small groups with middle school age kids. And I remember, it was mixed gender. Um, and we were talking about friendship, and we were reading a novel, like a young adult novel about friendship and coming of age story. And I said something like, I asked a young boy, I was like, who do you turn to when something is going on in
Mm-hmm.
your life? And he turned beet red. All of the boys in the classroom started laughing and giggling as if, even by the age of 10 and 11, these boys are being taught to not have intimate relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was recently I recently saw a video come across my page, and I'm really interested in your input on this, where it was like, men and women at work should not be like, men and women should not be texting each other, and
Mm.
especially should not be confiding in emotional issues with each other. Um, and I have really complicated feelings, very like conflicting, complicated feelings about videos like that. But I do feel personally like that dynamic of not having intergender friendships
Mm-hmm.
um, comes from the fact that a lot of men only get intimacy from women in their lives. And so it's really hard to suss out like what's romantic, what's
Mm.
sexual attraction, and so that's where I'm saying like I feel really conflicted about that because I wish that it was normal
Mm-hmm.
and comfortable and people could have those relationships, but I also understand that there's all this weird, I don't know, weirdness going
Yeah.
on with that. It's very complicated. I'm
Yeah.
curious your thoughts on any of that.
I totally agree. I think if when people were having that discussion like 5 years ago, maybe before I was married, I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's inappropriate. There's no, like, why are we talking about it? But now, kind of being in the research and being in this space, you're absolutely right. I think it is complicated. If I could see how a woman might, who's married to a man might be offended because we feel like, well, I'm used to being the support for the men in my life. So if you're taking this to her, what does that say? That you're not taking it to me. I've heard men justify it as, well, I just want like an alternative female perspective. And I respect that too. But also I'm like, so I see that being tricky. And again, you're right. I wonder if there would be maybe, I don't know, less of turning to women at your job if you were comfortable turning to other men at your job, or like other men. But maybe men feel safer emotionally with a woman because it's normalized there to tell me how you feel, what you're scared of, things like that. And I know that when men come together, they prioritize showing independence and competence, and that's important. And so status in that way, when I mentioned status earlier, being on top and capable. And so that's contradictory to me telling you my needs and where I need support, and my marriage is suffering and I feel lonely because I'm supposed to be showing that I am dominant and self-sufficient. Whereas women, I mean, it's commendable to be like, oh, I need help, girl, I got you.
Right.
So yeah, that's, you're right. I think that's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. And the other thing I've been thinking about is a lot of times, and I think this is also very much like a white woman thing,
Mm,
is isolation and like that hyper independence. And I know it's like a very much like maybe a white supremacy thing. Um,
Hmm.
this, a lot of people who are talking to me are saying, like, I can't, I'm very unsatisfied in my partnership, but I don't have options. I don't have anyone I can turn to.
Mm.
I don't have the support. Um, and I'm wondering if there is, like, how does friendship play into this and keeping people in maybe unsatisfying relationships? Like,
Mm.
how does friendship play a role there?
That is such an interesting question. And I saw somebody said, do I think it's a cultural thing with male friendship? Totally, because there are other friendships where it's comfortable, normal to like hug a guy or be more affectionate physically. So I think some of it's is cultural too. Um, to your point about how friendships, I hear you asking how friendships or lack thereof maybe play a role in feeling like we have to stay in unsatisfactory relationships.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I'm pairing that with my perception of it, based on how people talk to me about it, is a lack of community
Mm-hmm.
and not
Mm-hmm.
not having the support necessary or not knowing where to turn to even be vulnerable or talk about these things. And that's why I say, like, yeah. So
Yeah.
I see it
Hmm.
as a multi-level issue.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
does friendship play into that?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe culturally too, because I'm just spitballing. I'm wondering if because there's so much emphasis and praise on a woman getting married, and those of us who are resistant to it and feminists secretly kind of are like waiting for our turn. And so when it happens, you're like, okay, whew, I got my family. And so, and I've seen tons, hundreds of videos of this, of women being like, oh, my friend got married and she left us. So I wonder if, we haven't figured out how to maintain both, and so maybe you feel isolated in the marriage because to some extent you feel like you graduated from needing friends as your central circle
Mm.
because you have a family now. So I wonder maybe how much of it is that. I've been spending my whole life looking for my guy. Now I can have kids and do the whole thing. So I graduated from the all female friendship thing. I mean, I don't know how much of it's that. So it becomes harder to turn to them with issues. Maybe if I feel like I have to keep up the facade, maybe if I feel like I should be grateful. I don't speak about my marriage too much. That's not my brand. And I'm like, that's my business. But I will say, when I've had some hard times and I have shared like with my mom or other women, I have received feedback sometimes that's like, well, he's a good guy. And so it makes me suddenly feel ungrateful for
Hmm.
having like a valid concern. Like, well, I mean, I'm married and he is a good guy. So, and we've worked through those things, but that was the extent of my support in some circles. So I wonder if some of those things play a role in feeling like I should be grateful and it could be worse. And so I'll just figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, I do. I've seen the quality of my friendships change very much in the last couple of years. But I think I had a lot of like internalized, I don't know, patriarchy, capitalism, all that stuff that taught me that to endure, and like that really made me very strong. And I
Mm,
felt like the women in my life who were doing their full-time job and also prioritizing things at home and like carrying all of this weight, I compared myself to them.
mm-hmm,
And I had a very similar experience where I would maybe want to vent about something or problem solve something. And either I would be embarrassed or I thought it might reflect poorly on
mm,
me or my partner, or I was met with, well, at least he, or like, can't you just can't you just do better? Like 10 ways to like be a better working mom.
yeah.
Uh, and I found that like that feedback from those specific friends, or a water cooler talk at work or whatever, it drove a wedge. Like it made me shut down a little bit because it was like we were competing.
Mm,
And now I feel like there's been this shift, like you said, like these deeper, more um, intimate relationships. But so you said that thing that our relationships are more fragile.
mm-hmm,
To that same point before, if I felt like there was like any pushback about me venting or being
mm,
vulnerable, I was like, whoa. immediately repelled and did
Yeah.
not want to repair that.
Mm,
And it was easy. It's been very easy for me to like cut and run from friendship.
mm.
And so I'm curious. Like I have much more healthy friendships now, but I haven't had any issues with them, and I'm very sensitive. Like what can I do if I'm very sensitive to this like fragile intimacy?
Yeah, it's hard because we have an expectation that our female friends have emotional competence. Like we just, I mean, you're a woman, like you get what I'm saying, right? So whenever we feel like I shared something with her, so like obviously she needs to show up in this way, and we feel like she was dismissive or she didn't understand or she wasn't sensitive enough, then we almost see that as like, is that um like a malleable issue, like can I work through this with her, or is it indicative of a lack of compatibility? So a lot of times when issues do arise, when we subscribe to the idea that friendship should be very natural, like it's a chemistry, like she gets me, I say things, she gets it, like I don't know how many of us would admit to it, but I think a lot of us kind of have the expectation, like, girl, like you get it, you're a woman, come on. So whenever we feel like she didn't show up in the way she should have, then we are less likely to be like, okay, so I'm really struggling, and I feel like what you said yesterday made me feel like I should, be grateful that I'm just like, we're not talking through, we're just kind of like, mm, okay, I guess she doesn't have the capacity to understand my needs. We gradually distance, one word texts, we're like, didn't pass the test, So there's, it's tricky because I think we all do it to some extent because it feels unnatural to enter into healthy conflict with a friend when we see friendship itself as a refuge and recreation from everyday life. So I expect that this should be a fun, understanding, problem-free space. I was talking to this lady. Her name is Dr. Joyce Benenson, and she does a lot of research on men and women and our differences. And I know some people, I know there's talk around even that, but she's been in the game for like decades, right? I interview her, and she was like, wow, in all my time doing this, you're only the second woman who's ever talked to me. And I think it's because women don't like what I have to say. And she was saying that she believes that we have a low tolerance for female friendship transgressions because we're so burdened by all the other things we have to do. We don't have time for this person I elect to bring into my life to mess around. Because I got the babies, I'm caretaking for my older parents, I got this man, so I have less tolerance for transgressions, is her theory. And so she argues that that may be why we are more fragile in our friendships, although they're deeper, because we just don't have time to have those kinds of issues when we've got so much responsibility.
Wow, that's very interesting. Why I'm so curious, why would that repel women? Why would that research
Oh, I don't
be
know. I don't
off-putting?
know. She even like I asked her, I was like, "Do you have female friends?" And she was like, "Not really," because I talk about like how sensitive we are and how we'll flee at the sign of any whatever. But she was like, in a time when we want to hear like raw, raw girl support, yeah, girl, yeah, to be like, yeah, well, sometimes you don't support each other, and sometimes we don't have time to withstand and endure, a betrayal. Sometimes we don't have. It's just, and I thought that was interesting. She tells me about one research study she did where they went into college dorms, co-ed college dorms, and they talked to the RAs, and they were predicting who would have the most complaints about their roommates, like who would put in the most room change requests, right? And so they suspected guys, but it ended up being women. That women at the end of the year, the academic year, put in more requests to change roommates. And the reasons were because she puts on the light when I'm sleeping. She talks too loud. I don't like the way she smells. I don't like, she did this. Like relatively small infractions. We needed a new roommate. But men were enduring. They just, whatever. I mean, I don't know what you can take from that, but she used that as evidence of how we have less of a tolerance for things with each other. I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. And then I think about like how I've heard that most divorces are initiated by women because we're like, I see these issues. I want them repaired. And I know even if I bring stuff to my husband, he's like, I mean, I don't know. I guess I didn't know that was a problem. I'm fine with it. Okay, you're fine with it. I'm not fine with it. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there as well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. So it's making me think as you're speaking. There's this essay for anyone who hasn't read it, life changing for me. Um, was it anger? Anger as a tool. Why am I coming
I'm
up?
writing it down.
It's an Audre Lorde
Oh,
essay. The of course she's
yeah.
brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she talks about the relationship between women and how oftentimes women will be scared of their anger
Mm,
and instead will like disconnect or shove it down, and then it often comes out, it like blows up. And Actually, my friend Rebecca just had this very viral video go about pretty white Christian women who
mm,
turn into Karens, like
mm.
the
Mm-hmm.
trajectory of
I
that
think I may have
because
seen
of
that. Yeah.
brilliant. She does such a good job with it. And she talks about like the repression of and maintaining the status quo and having power taken from you. And so fearing conflict and the ways that that comes out later and finding control in specific ways.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, what that made me think of is when women will have conflicts with their male partners and then sometimes will just like cross their own boundaries over and over and over again and then
Mm,
resent and then just be like, I'm done. Divorce.
mm,
I cannot. Um, and I definitely identify that with that in my friendships, like not feeling like I can speak up, being afraid of a conflict. It feels high stakes, like you said, because it's very intimate. And okay, what if I express this and then it comes back and they're like, what if they reject me?
yeah.
What if I'm so hurt that like I'm afraid of my own anger? So it is really, it's easier to your point emotionally to just be like, I'm going to take a step back. I don't have the time or energy to face this transgression. Whatever, we can have drinks and cheese. I'm like,
Right.
we'll text like the one, like you said, like the one word text, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like protective.
Yeah. 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 It's hard. And then also, but there's research that suggests that when people push through healthy conflict, they do feel closer on the other side. I know it's awkward in the moment, but I do know that times with a friend I've been like, okay, that wasn't okay. Or I feel a little salty about something she did, and then I bring it up and I'm like, okay, I just don't feel good about that. What do we then and we hash it out. I do actually feel closer to her after because I feel like, okay, you understand me better now, like what my boundaries are, what makes me feel kind of weird. And I understand that I took from this experience that you care about me because you saw it as worthy to even have a conversation and listen to me. So now, okay, I feel closer and connected to you. I know with my husband, sometimes when we're like peak here, back and forth, and then we kind of get to figuring it out, then it does kind of feel like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
a healthy conflict. But again, I don't know if that's normalized as much in female friendships because I mean, think about all the stuff that we've consumed around female friendship. It's either we are braiding each other's hair and friendship bracelets or cats and dogs. So the conversations, and I will say there's more media lately that explores like the nuance of female friendship and we're the main characters and we're fighting through it, together. But normalizing being like, okay, what did you mean by what you said yesterday? Okay, blah blah blah. All right, cool. Okay, see you tomorrow. All right, yeah, see you tomorrow. So seeing more of that it's normal to be like, I'll see you tomorrow after we have this thing. But I love the way that you put it. Maybe it feels high stakes because it is so intimate. Maybe we know that friendships are, I don't want to say hard to come by, but that we should really value them. And so you want to protect it. So ironically, with the people we feel closest to, it's like, I don't want to rock the boat. I wonder how much of it too is not wanting to be perceived as the angry woman. I don't want to be difficult. I don't want to, like, just like in your marriage. Well, I don't want to be a nag. So I'm going to let it go because I don't want to be a nag. I know I've said that a billion times. Or in our friendships, I don't want to bring it up and look petty. I don't look petty. I don't want to look difficult. So you
Mm-hmm.
just want to be cooperative, so it can be tricky in that way. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that brings this important point that I wanted to talk about, and bring it back to this idea of like not, so many people say, I don't have a village. I don't like feeling very isolated within their partnerships, not feeling like they have friends. Um, but how do you, I guess I have a couple of questions. How do you meet people? Like, how do
Mhm.
you bring people into your network? Because it does feel really high stakes to like, I don't know how many friends, I'm sure you know the research. Like, on average, most people say just a few friends.
Yeah, actually, the
How do you get
number of
more?
friends that we have has gone down every year for decades since the 90s. That's the latest research from last spring. And that people are reporting having fewer friends. 20% of people have zero, or 20% of men have, I don't want to get it wrong. I think it recently changed, but have zero friends. Like, it's a big number of people who have no friends, not a one, no one to talk to. I think there are a couple reasons for that. I mean, I'm reading this book. God, I forget the name of it, but it's talking about social infrastructure and the loss of the third place, meaning, you
Oh,
know,
Palaces for the People.
yes,
Brilliant
yeah,
book. Brilliant. So
so
good.
good.
So
I'm
good.
learning so much. And yeah, so I think one of the things is that, like, I mean, those third places, the library and church and those things that we don't go to, that we don't have to, because I can have my church service on Zoom and I can order my groceries so I don't need to go among the crowd in the grocery store. I mean, so I mean the hyper independence of our culture definitely, yeah, decreases my chances of having this serendipitous moment with somebody at the park, because I don't need the park. I can work out at home on my workout mirror. I don't know. So that makes it difficult, sure. Somebody mentioned in the chat, which I so appreciate people's comments in the chat, and I'm reading every single one. Hyper independence, especially in relationships. I should look like I have it together as a mom. So I think some of it is that isolating, because who wants to look like a bad mom? I mean, that's a thing. I don't want anybody to think I'm a bad mom. So that means I'm less likely to share the issues I'm having, because I don't want to look like a bad mom. I don't want you guys talking about me when you leave about the choices I made about screen time or food or discipline. So I'm going to keep it to myself, which again, all of it's so ironic, because there's something known as the beautiful mess effect. And the idea is that we like people more after they're vulnerable with us. That people, the research shows that people who ask for help are people who get more support, which is not a revolutionary idea, but we need help, but we're not going to ask for it, because maybe a part of being a strong, efficient woman is I can manage my household. So if I'm telling you I'm struggling with my children, or I'm struggling in my marriage, it looks like I can't manage a household. And as a woman, I'm supposed to know how to run my house. So I don't know how much of it is needing the support, but it would require saying, I think I need support. So I think some of that maybe is a barrier. I think some of us, motherhood becomes our identity, because I talk to both sides. I hear a lot from women of, my friend got married, my friend had a baby, we don't see her anymore. Now I understand, like, well, yeah, there's a huge demand on my time, and psychologically it's very demanding, so I can't be in these streets anymore. But at the same time, for someone that's all they talk about, it is all that they have to offer this world, is being a mom. It is a blessing. It is one of my greatest blessings. But I have seen how, women cut off from certain communities because now this is all they are. It's like the biggest aspect of their identity. So, I always encourage them to get back to, like, what are some things that you do outside of having kids? What are things that interest you outside of having kids? Because we tend to isolate and life revolves around the kids, which cuts off my connections or opportunities for new friends, because this is all I am right now. And
Mhm.
that's kind of like a personal identity issue thing. And then, being intentional about prioritizing friendship. But I sometimes hesitant to say that, because I'm starting to learn that not every woman has support to do that. That not every woman has my situation where I can say, all right, well, you've got them. We're gonna go out, and I'll see you at 10. I think I'm realizing what a privilege that is. I'm learning, because sometimes I'll say, well, we'll ask your partner. I'm seeing how some men guilt, like, oh, you're good, but I don't. What am I gonna do with the kid? Well, and then you feel guilty, so you stay, or you have mom guilt yourself. I've seen women whose husbands are like, yeah, go do your thing, but you feel like you shouldn't be. That hanging out with your friends detracts from what you should be giving to your family, and you feel bad about that. There's research. Most of us are familiar with the concept of fight or flight. as stress responses. But they did that study again in the 90s, this time with women, and they found that we have two additional stress responses called tend or befriend. So when we're stressed, we'll either go and tend to those we feel might be more vulnerable, or we go and gather with our friends. And they found that when we come together, when we're stressed with other women, it decreases cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And okay, we feel good again. For that reason alone, I need to prioritize seeing my girls to be able to come back out here and deal with the stress of everyday life. They know what it is to navigate the world as a woman. They know I can give her side eye when something happens in a meeting. A guy says or does something, over talks me, and I can just be like, and she's like, mm. I feel supported and affirmed. So we have to prioritize it instead of pushing friendship in the margins of our lives, because we only prioritize the things that make us money and our family. And I think a lot of us are suffering the consequences for that.
Yeah, I think that's such an important part. And you mentioned that it's external and internal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know my journey, even before I found Fair Play, which is like the tool of division of labor that I'm certified in and that I use in my own home. Before I found that, when I had my kids, I definitely lost my identity.
Mm.
I worked full time. I was a mother outside of that and didn't really have time for, I didn't make time for myself. Um, and I remember, I would take, after a while, I felt really guilty, but I started like taking my kid and my carrier to places and continued to meet people. And as time went on, my husband felt more empowered to be the primary caregiver at home in my absence. But that took me being like, I don't need to be that. I don't like, I need to give him permission to do this. I had to give him space to step
Mm-hmm.
into that power. And now, just a year, like a couple of years ago, I remember I got involved with a mutual aid network in the neighborhood. And I'd known this person we were collaborating with for several months. And he was like, "Are you going to this event?" And I said, "Oh, no, actually, I have my kids on while my husband works in the evening. So I don't go out much on the weeknights." And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, "You have kids?" And I was like,
Mm.
"I do. I know I don't talk about like this is not the environment where I talk about that, but I shared that story on TikTok, and some people did call me a bad mom. They were like, "Well, I talk about my kids all the time," and I was like, "Well,
Mm.
I love them, but I'm also a person outside of that, and they're not always going to come up in conversation." So they knew me as Laura. They didn't know me as like Charlie's mom,
Mm.
and once I that was powerful. That was a very powerful experience for me, and it encouraged me to do more and fight that guilt. I'm
Yeah.
part of those people who my husband was like, "Please go.
Yeah.
Just go." And I'd be like, "No, but I want to there's so much to do at home." And in a couple of weeks I'm going to LA. I got invited. I'm very like honored and grateful. I got invited to a luncheon out in LA. I'm really excited about this experience. And I'm going for 4 or 5 days
Mm.
confidently, just being like, my husband was like, "Are you coming home Saturday or Sunday?" And I was like, I think I'm gonna stay an extra night." And he was like, "Okay, cool."
Mm-hmm.
And I would not have that opportunity if I hadn't undone some of that. Um, I haven't done some of that self work to
Yeah.
untangle myself from the guilt, but also if I didn't have a partner who
Yeah.
was like, "No, I got it.
Yeah.
I gotta go." And I'm gonna
Yeah.
meet all these amazing people, and like, I'm very nervous about meeting all of these people and maybe becoming friends with them. But
You
but
can
I'm
do it.
encouraged. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a blessing to have a partner who supports you having friends. I see women in my personal life, clients who do not have that. One of their struggles is being in a relationship where you are made to feel that you have to choose between hanging with your friends and hanging with your boyfriend, and again, or husband. Again, I wonder if that goes back to like if he had his own people, it might be less of a problem. So if we have men who don't have emotional support, now I feel jealous or uncomfortable with you leaving, or if I feel like a your job, like maybe I won't say it out of my mouth, but if a part of me thinks that your job is being home and running a household, then I see this as being disloyal, you going and frivolously spending time on yourself, but I don't even know that I know that that's what I'm thinking, but that's why I'm uncomfortable with you spending time
Mm-hmm.
with your friends. But research even says that people who have women who have friends, your relationship romantically is more stable, that it's stabilizing for your relationship to have friends, because when you're stressed, you have people you can turn to and be like, oh, how do I, you're helping me problem solve. You're helping me, de-stress by just talking to you. So when I come back, I have perspective. I know I have support and encouragement, so I don't know. Friendship is just at the heart of a romantic relationship. If I'm your friend and I tell you I'm overwhelmed with the kids, if I'm your friend, your job is to help your friend, so it's central to relationships. I try to tell young people now that I understand, like, girl, I know you have these things on your list, what you're looking for. Can you please add these things as well? What is he like with my friends? What comment does he make when I'm spending time with my friends? How does he see the division of labor? Just, you don't look for those things. You don't know to. But anyway, so yeah, it's tricky. And then I know that a very real barrier is time. I know that's a hard thing, just as an adult with responsibilities. And then when you have children, one thing I suggest there that I think might be helpful is, if there's any, there are any mamas or parents in the chat, is I think we have to rethink how we see hanging out with friends, because I know for me, I was very lively, independent, like, girl, yeah, yeah, yeah. And let's go out. Oh my gosh, let's do it. And spontaneous. So in my mind, that's who I am when I think of friendship. Those are the memories I have of hanging out. So if that's the image that I carry, of course I'm going to say, oh, I don't have time for friends, because I'm pairing it with the illustration of hanging out for hours at brunch or hanging out late at night. So I'm going to say I don't have time for that. And we might have to rethink a little bit. We do have time for friendship, but instead of looking for additional hours in my day, I might have to stack the hours I've got. So if I'm doing laundry every Sunday night like clockwork, maybe I create a friendship ritual where we hop on the phone for the 30 minutes I've got. We catch up on housewives. Girl, blah, 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 blah. Okay, all right, well, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna finish this laundry. Good to talk to you. I'll talk to you later. But that's me checking with my friend. It might not be sexy, but being like, hey, I have to run to the grocery store. Come with me. Come with me and fill me in on your date last night, because, girl, I need to know. Okay. So, because I got to stack the hours that I've got. I recently interviewed somebody for my podcast, and she leads a child-free community. And she was talking about being friends with people who have children. She was very gracious. She was like, I get it. I get it. But one thing that makes us feel prioritized, because they feel like we tend to be the default because we have kids. So she was saying that we sometimes have the attitude of, I mean, I have kids and I have limited time. So you come to me, and, because I have kids. So she was saying she gets it, but that's an attitude a lot of parents have, which I was like, oh, that's a great point. So she said, even you saying like, hey, I'm in the car and I've got 20 minutes. They're all yours. What's going on, without being interrupted. Like, one of our running jokes is like, oh, we hear our kids and we can talk anyway. But one demonstration of, I value you and I value this, I've got 20 minutes, but I'm in the car, so it's quiet because I want to hear your voice. That she said was like, is such a thrill. And so just little things like that. I think we have to get creative about how we spend our time in friendship. It might look a little different than it used to. I challenge you to rethink what comes to your brain when you think of hanging out with your friends. What image just came into your mind? Because if it's still us being out doing all the things for 3 hours at a time, you're always going to say you don't have time for friendship. So we might have to just get creative with what it looks like now.
Yeah, I love that point about being flexible about it. I've had a few comments here, and I know, or for us, something that was challenging during, throughout the pandemic has been, we were told the only thing that you should be going out for is work. You should not be
Mm,
socializing. That is too much of a risk for health to be doing that. And we are still, at our household, we don't do a lot of in-person socializing. We have a small
mm,
network of people, and I go on walks with my friend, things like that. But I have learned and integrated things like I was painting my porch the other day, and I hopped on a Zoom call with a friend and just like propped my phone up, put my headphones in, and just like painted the porch, caught up with her for an hour. And I have a standing date with a friend who is doing some writing with me on Fridays now,
mm,
where we don't even talk. We're just like co-working together from home. She's in California. And I do think there's some huge value. You know, there's the back and forth, the text and the respond to the Instagram stories and things like that. But getting a face to face
Yeah.
and getting on the phone, um, it's I get nervous about it. I get like anxiety and like I'm gonna ask and then I don't know, are they really gonna want to spend that much time with me?
Mm,
But it's great. Every single time I do it, I get on the phone with someone or pace around the house.
yeah.
There's this back and forth, this connection that happens that doesn't you get the immediate feedback and satisfaction of seeing each other and hearing each other and your tone and your face. And
Hmm.
it's been important for me personally to integrate that into how I'm communicating.
Oh, I'm so glad, and it's so interesting to hear the ways that you've woven it into your life. Like I love hearing about like the co-work thing is a great idea, and I need to steal that idea. Or like while you're painting, I think it's just like that's beautiful examples of how it can be done, but it might just look a little different than it used to, and that's okay. And I think we can put on the calendar the big girls trips. So I know I've got the thing to look forward to this year, but maybe in an ongoing way, it just feels a little different. So I love hearing those examples of how of your experiences and your friendships. And yeah, I mean, I think having a friendship ritual that even removes the mental labor of like, okay, so who's calling who, and I don't know when I'm going to see her again. A standing phone date on a Friday, or
That's
maybe it's
yeah.
every time there's a housewives reunion, that's our thing. Everybody knows. Don't bother me. We're
Yeah.
FaceTiming. We're wearing fancy dresses, and it's just silly, but like that's our thing. So what's a friendship ritual we can incorporate? So one, I know I'm going to see you. Two, it creates security in my friendship because I know I'm seeing you like clockwork. Shared experiences bond people together. So yes, I could paint alone. Yes, I could watch this reunion alone, but research shows it's so much better when I do it with a friend. If you put a duration on something, some of us avoid it because we're like, I don't know if I have all day to like talk with her on the phone. No. Okay, 30 minutes, catch me up on your
Hmm.
live. Can we talk 30 minutes tomorrow? It's helpful for introverts who are like, I need to charge my social battery. Okay, so if I tell you up front, can we do a 20-minute rundown of what you're going through? Those things help as well. So, it's common to say we have to be intentional, but we do have to spend some time thinking. Who do I prioritize? Because time is a limited resource. So, who am I going to prioritize? How can I build in consistency into the folds of our friendship? And how can I demonstrate that I value her in my life? And I think that's helpful for us as individuals, our friendship, and our household to have those kinds of friendships.
I love that. Those are all great tips. Okay, so we have like a couple minutes. Let's do this. I want to hear. I want to hear your greatest lessons. Like, what would be
Mm.
maybe one piece, one lesson that you could leave people with about friendship?
Oh God.
I know it's
Um,
really open-ended. Sorry, it's
I
not the
mean, I
best.
guess I would say a lot of things, but I guess I would say that, especially as adults, friendships do not just happen. I mean, I would scream it through the rooftops. There's a research study, I'll close with this, a research study where they ask people, do you believe that friendship should be easy, natural, organic, or do you expect that it might take effort? They followed these participants over the span of 5 years. The ones who said, I feel like it should be easy, natural, organic, were reporting greater feelings of loneliness than the people who said, I expect it should take some effort. So I need us to know going in, I'm going to have to try. I'm going to have to try to see her. I'm going to have to try to remember things about her, put it on my calendar so I can say, oh, how'd that thing go? I'm going to have to try. Because that's the only way. And if you're expecting to just bump into each other like we did in the fourth grade, it's not going to happen. So I think if we can commit in our brains, I'm gonna have to try. I think we will experience more satisfaction in our friendships because of that.
Okay, I love that. That's motivating. I'm gonna get off of here and I'm gonna like text five of my friends that I haven't talked to in a while. Um, I know that's part of that vulnerability. I have a hard time personally with like I love spending time with you. That like it's really hard for me to say stuff like that.
I know, but then like take perspective. If somebody texts you, if a friend was like, "Can I just say, girl, like I love talking to you," you're like in love. You're in love with her more. You feel more confident in yourself.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. You sold me. You sold me. I'm gonna put in the effort. I really appreciate your time talking with me. For people on this end, how can they get a hold of you? You do coaching. You tell people what you offer.
Yeah. So I'm mostly here running my mouth on TikTok. I'm getting more comfortable showing up as myself on TikTok. I normally start videos with like, here are 4 reasons, and I'm starting to get tired. So I'm
Yeah.
starting to show up a little more myself. But here on TikTok, of course, or everything lives at betterfemalefriendships.com for coaching or speaking stuff. But I so appreciate you having me because it is an important topic, and this has been exciting for me and eye-opening to talk about it at the intersection of domestic, household responsibilities, and you're giving me some things to reflect on. So I so appreciate you chatting with me and for having this conversation. And hopefully it's the first of many, honestly.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm also, I hope that I can report back after my trip. So I'm going to LA. I'm meeting a bunch of people that
Yes, we need details.
yeah. And these are like people I fan over.
Oh
They're
gosh.
like, I'm just like, you had a tip just before we go. You had a tip that I was watching where you said, like, if you're feeling nervous or you want to practice, talk to your Uber driver.
Yeah.
And I have an hour drive from the hotel I'm staying at to go there. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take deep breaths. I'm gonna bring my water bottle. I'm gonna like get into the groove, get some banter with my driver. So thank you. Always changing my life.
You got this. You still got this. And then remember too, I'll send you off with this something called the liking gap. And it says that we tend to greatly underestimate by 50% how much people like us in the first interaction. So you'll probably be just fine. They'll probably walk away being like, she was awesome. So just lean into that. It's in connecting for the sake of connecting. But I look forward to hearing you report back on your experience.
I will, and I'm gonna scroll your videos before I go. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you for having me.
All right, bye everybody.